Rogue Summoner is available on PC. A big thanks to Gamecraft Studios for providing me with a copy of the game for the purpose of review. Rogue Summoner is a traditional roguelike almost to the letter. That means permadeath, turn-based gameplay, and no meta progression. The turn-based gameplay is a different breed though. It's part auto-battler and part tactics game with a dash of chess influence. The key element is in the name. You're able to summon any creature you vanquish, allowing you to use them against other beasts in a procedural dungeon. Your job as the summoner is largely about planning your moves from the very first turn. You don't control and move around units directly in Rogue Summoner. Each creature has its own health, attack, movement speed, and behaviors that play out the exact same way each turn. This gives Rogue Summoner a distinct puzzle feel, rather than that of a tactics game. The monsters in Rogue Summoner have little in common with organic creatures. They are more closely aligned with pieces on a game board. Each one has very specific attributes and behaviors, and you never directly tell them what to do. While the dungeons and enemy layout is procedural, the gameplay is very deterministic. There are no dice rolls, random numbers, or critical hits of any kind. As a summoner, you have a limited amount of mana to summon creatures with. When you summon monsters, you choose where they are placed and what direction they face. The rest is automatic. Monsters will always approach the closest enemy they are facing based on their own specific movement pattern. Most monsters attack when they get close, but some use ranged or area attacks. If you win, you regain some mana, and if you ever lose all your monsters and can't summon more, you lose. The real complication comes in the form of the rush mechanic. In any other game, it would be a risk versus reward feature. In Rogue Summoner, it's more about your confidence in your planning. Normally, you can summon new creatures each turn, and if a plan didn't work out, you can recover by summoning more. When rushing, you only go by your initial plan. All the turns immediately play out, and if you lose, that's it, the run's over. But rushing is very much worthwhile, as it grants you extra mana if you win, and running out of mana is how you lose. It's a really clever feature. Learning how each and every monster works is the key to doing well. Since the game is deterministic and the stats and behaviors of every monster are set in stone, each procedurally generated encounter is its own contained puzzle. Enemies always go first when a turn begins. For example, spiders have 1 health, 1 attack, and 1 movement. If you place your own spider 1 space out of range, your spider will always win. The enemy spider will move, but it won't be close enough to attack. Then your spider will move right into melee range and destroy it. This is the fundamental truth of the game's mechanics. A wolf rider might only move in the shape of an L, not unlike that of a knight in chess. An archer might move and then shoot in the direction it's facing. A shield-wielding piece might block the first attack it takes from the front. Deeper stages can get incredibly intense, with several types of pieces present at any given time. This can be further complicated by a variety of environmental effects. It can be incredibly satisfying to parse out the victory conditions and place the right creatures in the right places before watching it all play out. You also level up your summoner during a run, though nothing carries over between runs. You can increase your mana, monster storage, and other passive benefits. You can also loot potions that can be used to imbue your monsters with stat boosts, or runes, which are basically spells that can deal damage or support your minions, both of which enhance the strategy, though the variety of either one is somewhat lacking. There are moments when you hit a stride with Rogue Summoner, when you're deep into the later layers of a dungeon, and every encounter is a brain-twisting puzzle to be solved. You have to strike a careful balance of summoning what you need to win, but always being sure that you're going to carry enough mana for the next fight, and it's a lot of fun a lot of the time. However, Rogue Summoner is also plagued by odd design choices, and what I consider a fundamental flaw with the game. Rogue Summoner is a game with no randomness in combat, which means the player needs to have perfect information in order to plan out their turn. Rogue Summoner intentionally gates how every monster works behind an arbitrary number of kills. You must kill a monster 10 times to learn how the piece behaves. It's not at all uncommon to fight your way through a dungeon, then simply lose because you have no idea how a new enemy moves, acts, or functions. Those losses don't feel good. It's not like the game beat you in a fair manner. It's a game that relies on you making a perfect plan, and it's very much like a board game, but one where you aren't allowed to read all the rules until it's kicked you in the teeth several times first. It's also super repetitive. There are several dungeons, all of which have a theme, and a couple of endless dungeons. The themed ones only feature a handful of enemy types, and sure, the encounters are procedural, but the mechanics of the game makes most early encounters painfully predictable. I'd say around 90% of the early floors of any dungeon boil down to playing the exact same creatures you're facing on a 1-to-1 basis, just slightly out of range. If the room has 2 spiders, you play 2 spiders, and boom, you win. It can be mind-numbingly boring until you get to the deeper and more complex levels of a dungeon. Then, whether you succeed or fail, you have to trudge through the early stages again. The endless dungeons have a bit more enemy variety, but the early stages are still going to consist of just a couple of types that you can mirror to win most of the time. Rogue Summoner is a clever game in a few ways, with a cool aesthetic. I really enjoy the fact that every monster looks like a figurine from a tabletop game, and the gameplay fits the look, with monsters feeling like game pieces. The rush mechanic is great, and when the game is at its best, it feels like a solid brain teaser, a type of puzzle that shifts and changes in every room, so you can never truly solve it. To get that far, you have to wade through a ton of predictable repetition, and you have to do that every single run. Early on, you will just start getting to the fun when the game will shut you down with a new monster that you don't know about yet because it refuses to tell you about it until you've already beaten it several times. It's like playing chess, but you don't know how the rook and bishop moves, and you aren't allowed to know until you've taken down 10 of them. It's silly, and it feels counterintuitive to the game's design. Those two issues make Rogue Summoner difficult to outright recommend. To get to the meat, you will need to be patient and chew through the fat, which is fine the first couple of times, but after a while your belly starts to get bloated and you start projectile vomiting everywhere, and then nobody wants to go to dinner with you anymore. The heavy repetition and strange way it gatekeeps critical knowledge brings down an otherwise clever game about creating a successful battle plan by summoning monsters. To recap, the pros. It has a clever plan and execute gameplay mechanic. The rush mechanic rewards confident one-stroke planning. There are several themed dungeons and 2 endless modes. The cons. The game is highly repetitive and mind-numbingly easy in early stages. It holds back critical information behind an arbitrary kill count for each creature. There is a small amount of potion and rune types. Overall, I give Rogue Summoner a 6.5 out of 10. If you found this review informative, liking and subscribing is extremely helpful. I've also left links down to my website and my creator store in the description below. My website is where you can find the bulk of my written content, and my creator store is where you can buy games that net you a Steam key, but also directly support my content. Thanks for watching, and until next time.